Hello, welcome back to the LadyK Podcast. Today, I'm so grateful to sit down with one of our Lafayette parents, Joe DeLisi. He's been a part of our community, he and his family, for the last, 18 months or so. And he brings a very unique perspective to this conversation, not only as a parent, but one who helps individuals, small business owners, make thoughtful, long-term financial decisions, which frankly I see as a beautiful segue into education because it's an investment. And so you run a podcast, Joe DeLisi Financial.
Right.
You talk a lot about practical, easy financial guidance to help families. And to me, from an educational standpoint, I love to think of in education as an investment. And what's the ROI on that investment?
Right.
So I would love to just kind of think about, for starters, just sharing a little bit more. Take us back to when you were choosing a school, you and your wife, and what prompted you to even look at Lafayette and then eventually choose Lafayette?
The answer to that question is Jamie did it.
Okay.
So we really divide up stuff in our marriage. I'm responsible for certain things. She's responsible for certain things, and I follow. We always say you have to lead and follow, right? You can't. It can't. And that was a follow. So she found you, I believe it was on Facebook early in before we even reached out to you. So she was following you, and then the pandemic hit and all this craziness went off, and so she was like, "Look, we got to make a change," and I just said, "Got it, let's go." And that was it.
And what prompted that change? What were you looking for that you were not getting?
Yeah, so we started off like I'm sure most people do. We started off and we call them the government schools, right? Public schools, and the quality of everything there was awful. Aside from the building, the buildings are beautiful, but and they do great with sports and all that kind of stuff. But the academics were awful. I mean, I can't even call them academics. They didn't study anything. There was no discipline. There was no leadership. And then so we moved into a private school, a religious-based private school, and it was a little better, but not by much. Both schools were heavily reliant on tech, Chromebooks, things like that. A lot of at-home study. And I think that was regardless, had the pandemic not happened, they would have done the same thing.
Right.
And so that was, I could go on and on and on, but really those were the big things. It's just the academics were lacking, and we just couldn't continue.
So when you heard the term classical education, had you heard that term before?
Probably, but I don't know that I could have told you what it was.
Yeah.
It sort of makes me think of like an Ivy League or a higher level. It's the best I could do in telling you that. And even now, I probably can't verbalize it that well, but I know the difference because we've experienced it.
So that's a perfect segue. I was curious, what sort of benefits have you seen in your own? You've got 3 kids / 3.5.
Yeah. Yeah.
One who's an intern, which we're loving tremendously.
Yeah.
What have you seen any benefits, tangible benefits at home in the way they act, their character, anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, there's several things. I just went on a trip with a couple of them. We try to, we have 6, so we take different kids, different places. And, like Rosie, who is in 4th grade, she'll kill me if I don't get it right. Rosie and Gavin were talking science in the back car, like about how when you open up a door in a house when the air conditioner's on, the vacuum and what that is. I mean, stuff that I have no idea what they're talking about. Oh yeah, Mr. Miller, and they kind of go off. That would never have been something that anybody would have talked about before. And then this just happened the other day. Birdie, our 6-year-old, yeah, it's tough to keep him straight.
It is.
So she tried jiu-jitsu a couple years ago and just didn't, she couldn't do it. She just couldn't. Not physically, it was more emotionally, really. And she wanted to try it again, and we put her back in there, and she just jumped right in. And she was like helping the other kids, like not forcefully, but with her hand, like, no, this is what we're going to do. And that's not just her growing up. She's in an environment, I think, where they foster leadership and they foster doing it yourself and that kind of stuff. So those are just 2
That's beautiful.
Off the top of my head.
That's when you talk about Rosie and Gavin talking about science, something that I have really appreciated. I'm reading a book called The Schools We Don't Have. I think I need to get the title correct. Anyway, E.D. Hirsch, he's written a number of books. One, Cultural Literacy, which actually got me into classical education.
Okay.
And in cultural literacy and in the schools we don't have, he talks about the idea of a shared language, a common language. And one of the beautiful things about classical education, which it sounds like you're just now starting to experience, especially when your kids have potentially the same teacher, like in science for Mr. Miller, is that they have potentially a common language that they can discuss. And so as the other component is, for example, all the literature that we read, it's all classical lit.
Right.
And so as your kids go through it, now Gavin is obviously ahead of Rosie, but as Rosie continues and assuming she goes all the way through high school, they will have read the same books and they will have had the same history, and they'll have this common language wherein they can have these conversations where they don't have to fill each other in on the gaps. They can just go. And that's I think one of the important components of a classical education is that we're trying to bring back this, what we call the Western paideia, which is what our country was founded upon, so that we have this thread of language that goes from generation to generation. And what we're seeing in education is this huge chasm that is creating this really divergence between just different generations and causing us not to connect with one another, particularly the founding of this country. And it's causing some major problems.
Yeah.
So one of the beautiful things about, and I don't mean to go off on this, but just what you said was so pertinent, is that one of my secret agendas is to help bring the family closer together. And one of those ways is in which they have the same education allows them to talk to each other, regardless of age. And I think that's a very powerful thing. And I'm excited that you're seeing that in your family.
Well, we're interesting because I think we're the perfect A/B test, because we've got three, Gavin's, he's getting exposure, but he started off in the government schools. Like so he didn't come into Lafayette until he was 8th grade, 9th grade, whereas Rosie pretty much from the start. I mean, she was like 2nd grade, and Birdie and Winnie from the start. Now our other two older kids, older than Gavin, I mean, if you ask them what communism is, they don't have any idea. Capitalism, like they've heard of it, but they have no idea. You talk about World War II, ask them when the Revolutionary War was fought. Give me a century. They have no idea. And then the younger kids, though, I talk about the A/B test. They do know that. They're going to know that. And so, I don't think it's I don't think it's hyperbole to say that if we're going to save the country, it starts with education. It has to.
Yeah.
And some people laugh at me when I say that, but I'm like, well, just look at the road we're on and look at the scoring and look at what we don't know. It's really kind of shocking.
So next year, sophomore year for Gavin, he's going to have a whole semester on economics. And they're going to dive into, they use Thomas Sowell's basic economics.
Great. Yeah.
And they juxtapose Keynesian and Austrian economics. I'm just curious, being in your line of work, having that as a basis for Gavin as a 16-year-old, what, is that's probably a shared language between the two of you then?
It could be. I mean, I think economics, there's micro and macro.
Right.
In my world, and I think you're talking more macro, I would teach everybody macro.
Okay.
The micro is difficult. The micro is great for somebody who wants to be in business and they need to understand supply chains and things like that and how that all works. Macro in my world is more about, are we going to be communism, collectivism? Are we going to let the American dream flourish and be rugged individualists, unlike the mayor of New York's talking about? So it depends on how Gavin picks up on that and how his brain works. There'll be some common language around that, but the idea of somebody studying Sowell or even look at Keynesian economics like that, it's not going to occur anywhere else. So whatever he gets from that is good, as far as I'm concerned.
I wish I had it.
Yeah,
I was 4 or 5 years too late, and even then, it's difficult to understand that language when you've never been introduced before. At least he'll have an appetizer, and then we'll see where that goes from there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So given your background in helping others with long-term financial decisions, how do you think of education as an investment? And what kind of ROI are you looking for yourself personally?
I think this gets into college. You and I have talked about this before. Yeah. So everyone's gonna have to take this with a grain of salt. I went to the University of Maryland. I went to a big college because I didn't know what else to do. I was leaving high school. Nobody really talked to me about what you do next. I wasn't ready to be a grown-up. I went to college. I studied communication because the cute girls were there, and it was the easiest one I could get into. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
What I figured out about college was it was a game. And my first semester, I was on academic suspension because I didn't understand the game. I couldn't play hockey. I couldn't do anything I wanted to do. Then I understood it was a game. You show up, you answer what they want you to answer, you fill in the boxes they want you to fill in. And I graduated with a 4.0 in my major. I was Phi Beta Kappa. I didn't know anything. I left college not knowing anything except how to play that corporate game. So I say all that to say this. I don't put a big... I don't put a lot of stock in college. Now, that being said, if you're going to be an engineer, if you're going to be a biologist, if you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, something very specific. But most kids at 17 and 18 have no idea what they want to be. Right. And so I'm finding that kids, especially from what I do, I've got clients that are more than willing to pay $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 per kid to send them to the University of Football to drink beer and have fun because that's what they did. But when they did it, it was 80 grand. So you mentioned ROI. The ROI of an undergraduate education in most schools now, you can't possibly get the ROI. So when Jamie and I look at Lafayette, our view is, well, what they're going to learn K through 12 is beyond what they're going to get at a 4-year institution, just general studies.
So sad. It's true.
Yeah.
I completely agree. But it's sad that's where we are as a country.
It is. It's insane. So the way we look at it is like, look, we just want them to be productive members of society. Everything, and I mean everything, is going to change in the next 3 to 5 years with where tech is and everything like that. I think the people who are still looking at 4-year degrees without any idea of a plan of what they actually want to do in life, I just think that's old. What they need is education.
And when you say education, what do you mean? Like, what is it that you need to walk away with so you're prepared for the next 20, 40 years?
This is going to sound dumb. They need to know how to read. And I'm not just talking about like, oh, I can physically read those words on paper.
Right.
Internalize it, explain it back, understand, right? Competency. They need to understand how math works.
Yeah.
They need to understand how to deal with people. They need to understand, you mentioned before the founding. If we can't understand why the United States was founded, it will never survive. And people kind of brush that off. In fact, it's worse than that. They're changing the history completely. You can do it. You can change the history, but we'll never have the founder mentalities. We'll never have the business owners. There's an argument right now in California about having a wealth tax. And people have no idea what that means to them because they just think, oh, it's just the billionaires. That is dismantling the American dream and capitalism at its core.
Yeah.
Our kids need to understand why I'm saying that. They're not going to learn that at a 4-year college studying, I don't want to insult anybody, but philosophy. Or everyone always uses like basket weaving, but like there's a lot of studies in college that you can't apply it. As a business owner, I'm not going to go hire somebody who says, I need to make 150 grand because I have these loans. They're just not, they're not competitive. So I went off on that, but it's hard when I work with clients because it's emotional for them. Because they want their kids to have the experience they had when they were, like when I'm 51. So when I went to college, it was very different. Yeah. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. I would say too, for the high school component, it's the same thing. I've got parents who are like, oh, I want them to have the football, the big prom, all of this stuff. It's not like that anymore. It's a different world that we live in. And our kids are being exposed to things that we never even were, maybe on a very small scale, but it's not like it is today. And it's robbing them of their innocence, their youth, and catapulting them into an adulthood that they're not ready for. But it's the high school is even different than it used to be.
It's radically different. And, I feel like every generation will say that about the next generation. I get that, right. I try to like be cognizant of that. But the argument I hear about, oh, no, I'm not going to go to Lafayette because I want to go to school for sports or whatever the case might be. Sports is radically different. High school, if I was a baseball player in high school, that's how you got to college. That's how if you wanted to play professionally, you played high school baseball. Now, these teams don't care where you play in high school. They care where you play in club. The whole youth athletic world is, in my opinion, has been destroyed. You can't just go out and play for fun anymore. And the stats. These kids aren't going to go to play professionally.
What percentage? Like less than 1%.
A fraction of a fraction. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's insanely low.
Yeah.
And so, it's the parents' dream. So that's a tough argument for people to have. Jamie and I always use this phrase that, well, the DeLisis do it different. That's just what we do. And very few of our friends understand us, but and maybe we're doing things wrong. We're okay being wrong about stuff, but I just can't look at what everybody else is doing and seeing the path everyone else is on and say, well, let's just go down that route.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. All good points. So have there been any surprises now that you're fully immersed into Lafayette? Have there been any surprises for you, whether it's academics, character, culture, that you would cite?
I think, I don't want to use this as a surprise because I was expecting the culture to be a very specific culture. I'll just say love of country. I feel like some people will say that's a Republican school. That's a horrible way to look at it.
Yeah.
I'm a conservative. I'm a constitutional conservative. I would say most Republicans aren't that. The school I feel like is very conservative culturally. And that doesn't mean that everyone believes a certain policy across the board. That isn't even the way it should be.
No.
But I do believe that there's this universal love of our country and where it came from and why it's there. So I don't think it's a surprise. It was my expectation, but we've been let down so many other times that it is kind of a surprise when we show up and you walk in, you see pictures of, James Madison and Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln, and like those things don't exist in these other schools.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So when your child or children graduate, 18 years old, what do you want them to have? You've talked about reading, mathematics. Is there anything else beyond a transcript that you want to say definitively, okay, Lafayette, you did a good job. My kid's ready to go?
Yeah. Well, I used the term before, productive member of society.
Yeah.
In order to be that, they need the essential building blocks that were taken for granted when I was a kid. I went to a Catholic school in Pittsburgh for like 10 out of 12 years. And they did a great job of that. They really did teach a lot of that stuff. When Gavin, Rosie, when they leave, Bertie, they're going to be able to make a decision. I do want to go to further my education because I want to X. I want to be a scientist. I want to develop rockets. Great. I don't think any of them are going to say, I want to go to Alabama to watch football and Daddy, you got to pay for it. It won't make sense to them. And they're going to have all of the tools to go out and start a business or, be a quality employee for an employer. See, I think employers over the next decade are going to look at college education very differently. They're saying it now.
Yeah.
Tech founders are saying it now. They're like, look, we're not going to Ivy. We're going to the small tech schools in North Carolina to hire these people. That's where we're going. And so I think the future is very much in favor of what Lafayette is doing. And these kids are going to have such a huge advantage. There's no downside. The downside is, they're not going to go to prom. You know what? The dinner dance thing that you guys, I don't know what you call that. What is that called?
We call it the winter dance.
The winter dance.
Etiquette dinner and dance, yeah.
Way better than prom.
I agree. I've talked to a couple of parents who have come to that just as bystanders or, getting a bird's eye view. And they have said, wow, this is incredible. It is magical. And at first I took it for granted, just to give our members a little perspective. We actually currently we're in the midst of training etiquette. So we do, setting the table, how to eat a formal dinner, a receiving line, how to have conversation, all of these soft skills.
Yeah.
That are they are not being taught. They're not actually even, in some cases, I think, even at home anymore.
No.
It's very rare people sit down to dinner anymore. We're sticklers, much to my kids' chagrin, about manners. And so we're trying to teach it, but it's tough.
Yeah.
And then in addition, we do have dress regs for the dance. The girls have certain expectations. The boys are in coat and ties. They don't have dress regs anymore at high school proms. You probably see the pictures online and you're like, wow, that's a dress.
I have daughters.
Kind of, yes. So it is a magical evening, and everyone leaves happy. There's no drama. People are friends afterwards. I hear that's quite the opposite today at modern day proms.
Yeah, that's been our experience.
Really?
Homecoming prom. I think there's another one I don't even know, but. Yeah, it's awful. I sound like an old grandpa, but I'm not.
And you don't want that for your kids, obviously.
No.
You want them to have a beautiful time, and it's just not. It's not seeming to be cultivated.
It's not,
unfortunately. And you know what else I love about the dance is that we have integrated another way of secretly pulling the family together is we do have, you've experienced this, where the family comes in and at the end, we're all dancing together. You know, you're dancing with your daughter if she's there and mothers are dancing with their sons and then doing line dancing together. And it's just this beautiful convergence of generations coming together. And it's a very special time. So,
you know, when you're talking about this is just random, but the show Yellowstone, which has been off for a couple of years now, we rewatched it. It's a rough show, so be careful. But it's interesting because that show, I don't think that people watched that show because of the violence. I don't think they watched it because of the sex. I think they watched it because they were showing this old Western, these men and these women and how they interacted and a life that was, I mean, the show keeps talking about it. This is going away. This is going away. And you get depressed watching it because we know it's going away. Mm-hmm. And it is self-reliance and manners and operating and keeping your word. And this sounds so simple, but the government school system and most of these private schools, they are not interested in that. It's just not even on their radar. For some of them, it's, the government schools, it's the opposite of that. They're like, well, that's old. And it's just such a bad situation.
Yeah. Well, it's devaluing what got us here.
Right.
And that is a sad state. And I think too, not to get too philosophical, but those male and female roles that are completely unique to the gender are being just numbed down, I guess, or the lines are blurred as much as possible. And yet there's a feminine lane and a masculine lane that are so essential to completing the whole piece, the whole puzzle. And I think that's what we're trying to preserve. Mm-hmm. We have taught our young men that when a lady walks into the room, she's late to whatever, you pull the chair out for her, you open the door for her. And ladies, you can express gratitude for that. There's nothing wrong with having our the way we come to the table in our unique way and celebrating that. And that's what we're trying to do is celebrate what each person brings to the table.
If they don't know that, they can't do what I mentioned at the outset, which is we call it lead follow.
Yeah.
Marriage is being defunded, so to speak. It's not celebrated, and it's looked at as prison, but it's not that. They can be a beautiful thing, but you have to lead follow the spouse. But you can only do that if, as you mentioned, there are certain lanes and expectations have been, verbalized and then met. But I can't expect Jamie to carry a weapon and defend the house. That's not her job. That's my job. And vice versa. There's certain things that I just don't do well. That is exactly the feminine lane. Create a beautiful home. Be soft with the children. It's just different.
Yeah.
You can't have this conversation in the government school, and it's ignored in the private schools, even in the religious private schools, because a lot of the religions are moving away from that. It's becoming much more secular. That was a surprise to us, but that's what we found.
Yeah, I do. I think and when we're teaching dance, it's really a beautiful thing in that we are teaching, because we have 8 ballroom dances that we teach in PE. Yep. And frankly, your son is doing an amazing job.
I'm surprised.
He will not like me hearing that when it's on the podcast, but he's doing a tremendous job, and all of our young men are.
Yeah.
But there's this opportunity for them to stand up and to lead, the women to follow, which a lot of cases our culture is teaching women that they have to be the leaders.
Right.
And so there is literally and figuratively a dance going on in our hallways that allows our students to have that ebb and flow with each other in a very graceful, respectful way. So I love that you connected marriage to dance, because it really is. And it switches, right? It depends.
It does.
And so that's beautiful. You have the humility to do that. So in kind of wrapping things up, if a curious parent is coming to Lafayette, they know nothing about it, what would you share with them to help them understand the value of what we're offering that hopefully has benefited your family?
The way I've answered this question, because people have asked me, I take it, so we try to operate from like first principles in our house. Yeah. And so in education, I believe that it starts with the love of this country. It starts with the love of freedom. And what is freedom? Because freedom can be very messy and difficult.
Yeah.
It's not linear. It's not easy. It's not even systematic. Freedom is messy. If you have a love of those things, this school is going to make a lot of sense to you. If you don't understand what that is, this school might make a lot of sense to you. if you have no interest in freedom, if you're looking for people to do things for you, this is not the place to come. It's going to be hard. That's the other thing I think I should mention. Some parents have been like, well, it'll be too difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you say to that?
I don't say this because it comes across mean, but I think it's nonsense. I mean, again, the A/B test, we've got 3 kids who went to the government school systems. I mean, they were getting A's and B's, and when I say they couldn't read, they could barely read the words on the paper. They certainly couldn't comprehend. So is that going to fly at a classical school? No, but it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because those kids will never be productive members of society in a free and open society like we have here. So I'm not you, so I'm not objective. Look, it's not going to be like the government school where they show up and they graduate. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. You have to put in the effort. Some parents perk up to that, and some parents recoil from that.
And I would agree with you. It is not for everyone.
Yeah.
And we've learned that now we're heading into our 10th year this next year. Mm-hmm. And it is interesting to see who it resonates with. And sometimes I'm surprised. And other times, I guess on both sides, I think, it'll resonate greatly with this family. And then it just doesn't work for whatever reason. But for the majority, it has. And it's a privilege to work with families like yours and with others who understand the value of freedom and though it's messy, the benefits that it brings for our children long term. Yeah. So that kind of brings me to my final question is, when you are thinking about legacy building for your family, as we all do, where do you feel classical education and Lafayette fit into that story? This is going to be something that changes them for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. And my hope and expectation would be for the best.
So I come back to the productive member of society. That's my as a father, that's my number one thing that I'm trying to give my children. Beyond that though, one day I'll be dead and gone, and so will Jamie. And these kids will have kids, and I want them to be close. They don't have to agree on everything. I want them to be close. I want them to stand up for each other. I want them to, take care of each other when necessary. I want them to have that family glue. Mm. And you mentioned language before.
Common language.
Common language, yeah. So common language, but also common experience. So they grow up in the classical education. They grow up in Lafayette. They're not all going to agree on politics. They're not all going to agree on religion or any of it. And, there might be a lot of similarities, but they're all going to have a baseline that they can come back to. Yeah. So I'm dead and gone. My legacy is they have to be productive, and I want them to stay tight. Mm-hmm. And this may not guarantee it, but I will tell you that if they stay in the government school system and they keep going down the road that we're going down, there's very little hope of those things occurring. Yeah. So hopefully we can help support in that endeavor. Mm-hmm. And I would agree. That's probably my goal for our family as well, my husband's and mine. So I really appreciate you sharing your story today. Education is obviously one of those most consequential activities that we do with our family, with our children. And there is obviously no single path that defines, or that's right for every single person. But I do think, to your point, that if it resonates with you, my goal in founding this school is that we complement the values and the goals that you are charging ahead for your family, and I hope that we can continue to see that forward. So thank you
for your time again, and you can check out the Joe DeLisi Financial Podcast. You've been with Katy McKinney and Joe DeLisi on the LadyK Podcast, and thanks again for joining us.